If you were to stack rank the biggest users of IT and by inference data, the telecom service provider industry would easily rank number 1 or 2, probably along financial services, as the biggest consumers of technology. So what impact are AI and big data having on how telecom service providers are serving their markets and differentiating from their competitors? In this episode, we dive into how AI is transforming telecoms and what it means for how we connect and communicate. Hello and welcome to the AI Forecast. I'm your host, Paul Muller. Join me along with leading companies and industry experts as we explore the past, the present and the future of data and AI in the enterprise every week, proudly brought to you by the amazing folks at Cloudera. Well, to provide his perspective on the convergence of AI, big data and the telecom and communication service provider business, we're joined by Head of Member Solutions for the TM Forum, Mike O'Sullivan. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Hi, Paul. Thank you very much indeed.
It's great to have you here. Before we jump into talking about the world of communication service providers and AI, we do a little thing at the start of every podcast called the lightning round or the fast four.
Go for it.
You ready to do it?
Yep.
All right, first question. What would people who know you best say is your superpower?
Yeah, just what a lucky guy. My superpower is luck.
Explain.
Well, basically...
Well, you are Irish.
I'm an Irishman and it just follows me wherever I go. I never miss a train, never miss a plane. I've always landed exactly on time. So I'm a dead lucky guy.
That is unbelievable. I love that story. All right, next up, you've had a long background in technology. What do you think the most impactful technology of all time is? Go as far back as you want.
Okay, for me personally, I think it's silicon, it's semiconductors. You know, that's the basic foundation for everything that we do, everything we deliver. And in itself, it was a massive game changer.
Now, we talk a lot about, and we're about to talk about AI and what it does for business. But what would you like to see AI automate for you personally in your future? What's on your wish list?
I actually think what I'd love to do is actually help me to understand what the likelihood of the winning lottery ticket numbers are. Right, yeah, believe you me, if I have one regret in my life, it's I just didn't choose the right numbers last week or the week before or ever.
That puts paid to the idea you're so lucky, though, in my opinion. I think you've just...
Well, I'm lucky not to have won is the way I look at it, because I kind of have to find other ways to enjoy myself.
I don't think anyone's ever said that before. All right, last but not least, you've been in sales, is that right?
I've been in sales. I've done all sorts of roles. And
you work with data every day. You work with data as you're obviously thinking about the future of the telecoms industry. What are some of the best practices or hacks or tips or tricks you've got as someone who works with data every day?
I think it's actually use data and use it to help you understand. I think we sometimes become preoccupied by data, and the very simple question I always ask myself is, so what? I mean, if you don't understand the why am I doing it, and what's the purpose behind it, then actually why do it at all? And data is a really great way of actually really pushing you down the so what question. It helps you to answer that.
So let's talk a bit about the communication service provider industry. We'll start with you, maybe a bit of background about your career and how you got to be where you are.
Luckily, I joined the industry well over 40 years ago. I joined an organization most people know, IBM, and my journey through the world of IT has been just amazing. You know, working through telecommunication service providers, working with vendors, having a broad range of experience. The way I look at it, I've actually had a 40-year apprenticeship. I'm learning every day, which is fantastic. During that time, I've had all sorts of roles, responsibilities, which have armed me to address challenges that we often face on a daily basis.
It's funny you say it's, I do liken the IT industry to being an apprenticeship, because you could do all the formal training in the world, but because it moves so quickly, it is also something you have to experience. If you step out of it for a few years, the world moves on so quickly, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if we just think of the last 5 years, I mean, COVID 5 years ago, yet despite that, we have seen a massive level of change in terms of how we take and apply technology. And of course, I think, the greatest, latest, and probably I personally think technology that's going to have the biggest impact going forward is almost certainly AI and data. I mean, they're sort of Siamese twins. You don't get one without the other. And consequently, you've got to look at it in that context. The data is there. It's everywhere. I collect it. What I do with it, probably I look at it when it all goes wrong. What AI does and allows me to do is to look at it in real time and actually say, it's all going wrong or starting to go wrong. I can do something about it.
Right,
and I think that's really the power of what AI and data brings to the table.
Couldn't agree with you more. You're now at the TM Forum.
I am, yes.
So maybe tell us a bit about how you came to be at the TM Forum and what your role is there and what the TM Forum does.
Sure, okay. Complicated question, so let's break it down. I joined the TM Forum about five and a half years ago. I was originally the regional director for Europe. So I looked after our relationships across the European region. And more recently, I've moved on to a new role, which is head of member solutions. And in that role, my responsibility is simple. I work with my colleagues to make sure that we provide the best value to our members, to make sure that what we create as an organization is consumed and used to the best effect. And it's probably the best job I've ever had.
Well, not everyone knows the TM Forum. I do, of course. I've got a background in telecoms like you. Tell us a bit about the TM Forum and their mission.
For those not familiar with the TM Forum, we're an industry association, specifically the communication industry, and we are a forum, a not-for-profit forum, an organisation that brings members together. And we've got over 800 members, which range from service providers, vendors who sell into the industry, organisations like Cloudera, for example. We have systems integrators and consulting organisations. And more recently, we've been joined by the 3 major hyperscalers. So what we're doing is bringing together this ecosystem, this community, really to focus on how we take and help and adapt and evolve our industry to become more profitable and to really become better positioned in the marketplace to be able to provide better value to their customers.
Now, when we think about, I suppose, cloud and AI, we think about the communication service provider, at least I do, providing the pipes, those giant pipes that connect the customer, the end user, the source of the data, whether it's IoT or a consumer or another business, back to the data and the services. There really is a broader role that AI has to play in the communication service provider world. So talk to us a little bit about the impact that AI is having on, or data is having on, the way communication service providers are thinking about their businesses. Maybe even take a step back. What's the state of the business right now? I suppose it'd be great to get an update.
Let's talk about the state of the business first, because I think that sets the environment, the canvas in which we're working.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we as an industry are we're under severe pressure, like all industries. We're typically investing a lot of money, capex money, cash, in terms of fiber rollout, copper to fiber migration. Lots of investment in RAN networks, continual upgrading networks, huge drain on capex. Whereas what we're not seeing is significant growth in revenues. Yeah. And notwithstanding that, we're also seeing pressure being put on OPEX. OPEX is not getting lower, even just standing still. It's going to increase through inflationary impact. So we are actually at a real crossroads in our industry. We've really got to find a way of actually repairing that paradigm or changing that paradigm, moving away from the flat revenues and moving towards revenue growth. But at the same time, really getting a grip of the challenges we face in OPEX and driving OPEX out. And I really do think that what AI and data does, it really gives us this real opportunity to be able to take the data that we create, because we create vast amounts of data in our industry. Like I said at the very beginning, what does data do? Data allows me to make informed decisions. So AI, predictive AI, agentic AI, whatever you want to call it, AI harnessed with data allows me as an organization to make those informed decisions so I can actually do things better. So what are those things? Well, I can have a better customer relationship. I can run my network more efficiently. I can actually have a much more automated operation environment. I can do simple things. I can actually run automated test routines. You're familiar with the industry. Yeah. I mean, you'd write some software and then you'd spend the next 3 months testing and trying to break it. Okay, that lead time is simply too long. It doesn't give us an agile environment. Now I can actually start to create, test, validate and launch capabilities in real time. Now that's a game changer.
So let's talk about the industry, because again, some people who are listening may be wondering, well, I know what my telco is, I know who they are, and they possibly assume that all telcos are the same. But there's I suppose been a shift in the market in the last probably 15 years, I would say, where we've gone from the network operator was the same person selling you access to sort of a split between the two, where you've got infrastructure providers, the people who own the copper or the fiber in the ground, or the transmission towers in the case of 4 and 5G, and you've got organisations that are almost virtually, I guess you would call them virtual operators, right? They don't own anything and they're more of a sales function. So where is the AI opportunity? Is it in the network, in the nuts and bolts of the telecoms world, or is it in the sales world, or is it both?
It's actually both, and let's be clear about this. AI is a technology; it's a tool. It's something that I can use and I can apply. Okay, and that's really important. It's not an answer to a question; it's the way in which I get to the answer to the question. And I think this is kind of some of the misconceptions we have in the industry. The answer is let's do AI. Yeah, okay. What does that mean? It means I take this technology, this capability, the AI and data capability, and I apply it in specific areas. So yes, I can apply it to the network, to the physical infrastructure and run that network more efficiently, make sure I'm actually optimizing the network in terms of from an energy point of view, so I can start to reduce my carbon footprint, so I can start to use the AI in real time to actually change the dynamics of the network. Equally, the way I deliver my services to my customers, and it's quite interesting, the shift over the last 5 years, 10 years, we've moved away from consuming capacity. We used to sell capacity, whereas now we consume a service or a capability, and we do that through apps. Whether it's on your mobile phone or whether it's on your desktop, whether it's through your enterprise, we consume a capability. Now, how do I create and deliver that capability is so much more than just delivering a pipe, whether it's a fat pipe, little pipe, bit of round, whatever. It is so much more than that. And what AI and data really allows us to do is to actually understand that and in real time deliver that, because that's our expectations. When I press a button on my mobile phone, I expect to actually have the service that I'm expecting. And I know the service providers can do it because I have that trust in them. Because I trust them with my data. I trust them actually in some cases with my life. Because I know when I pick up the phone and I phone 911 or 999, I know that will be answered and I'll get through to the necessary services. So it is, we assume it's there and we accept it's going to be there. But we've got to deliver so much more than that simple connectivity proposition.
So when you're talking to your members at the moment, where is the focus or energy going in relation to the AI conversation?
I think it's understanding it right now, and it's trying to work through the business case and the scenarios where I can take it and apply it. So, for example, we're doing, and if we talk about TM4 just for a minute, what we've recognized is that there are really urgent decisions as an industry we need to make. So we're focusing on 3 missions. The first mission is we know we've got to sort out the software environment, the software stack. We've got a complex, difficult to manage, difficult to evolve environment. So we've got to simplify that and we've got to automate it. So again, AI is helping us to do that. We've also got the network, the core thing that we sell. And again, we've got to, we're looking at finding ways of automating that, of actually taking out the complexity, not the complexity at the detail level, but at that higher level where we can start to actually make informed and intelligent decisions. Now we bring those together, and if you think of that as a Venn diagram, and those 2 missions are very important. They're the sort of no regret decisions. We've got to focus on those decisions. We've got to make sure that we get those right. Coupled with that Venn diagram is this 3rd disc in the Venn diagram, and that's AI and data. And it's the relationship between those 3 missions that actually we've got to focus on, double down on, and deliver on. So we're talking to all sorts of people in the industry. So we talk to the enterprise architects about how we can look at the software stacks and how we can simplify that and consolidate the software using plug-and-play reusable software modules. We're using standard APIs, so really reducing the cost of integration, really driving out the technical debt. But that's just part of the jigsaw puzzle. We've also now got to look at the whole network infrastructure. So autonomous networks is really important. How do I start to deliver those real-time capabilities? And I can't do it manually. I was talking to one of my sons, trying to explain to him, what it was like when we used to actually deliver a service. You'd phone up the help desk and then the person would actually provision the service, and then you get your service, and it was typically done in a batch format. So I was trying to imagine that if I wanted to play a game on my mobile phone, can you imagine? I want to play this interactive game. I need high capacity because there's a lot of rendering. I've got to have low latency because it's real time. So in the old-fashioned way, I'd have to phone up the operator and say, I want to play this game at 3 o'clock. It's a bit like trying to land a jet at an airport, a plane at an airport. You've got to find your landing slot. So they go off and they configure the network and they do all the necessary things. And of course, in my case, not that I'm not unlucky, but my wife says, actually, you can't play the game. You got to off and cut the grass. So you've got to find another landing slot. I mean, I overemphasize it and overegg it, but the point is it was very manual, very disruptive. So what we now need to do is we need to do that in an automated way where I press the button and it happens. And actually what happens is the network reacts to what I want. It understands that this application needs low latency, that this application needs high capacity. In banking, for example, this needs a higher level of security. The application determines the behavioral aspects, the patterns that the network needs to deliver, and we also need to do it in a way that we can monetize it. So that's kind of a big challenge for us as well. How do I move away from selling capacity and selling capability? And this is kind of one of the big challenges that are really facing the ServCo, as you call it, the people creating the solutions. They've got to basically now be able to present solutions that can be consumed, but they've got to be flexible. It's a totally different dynamic, and it's actually a different way of potentially selling. And that's kind of quite a big pivot for our industry, and we've got to figure out the business models associated with it.
So on that note, where do you see, or your members probably more importantly, where do they see the biggest opportunity right now? Is it in cost takeout, to your point around OPEX, and just restoring margins? So you can't grow margins by growing your business because everyone's got at least 2 mobile phone service, the 2 SIMs, et cetera now. So is it about cost takeout or is it about product innovation, or do you think it's both?
It's both. I mean, it is absolutely driven by cost. And if you think of this journey, it is driven by cost reduction, OPEX reduction. Because OPEX reduction is a multiplier. If I save $1 million this year, I'll save the same $1 million next year. And if I save more next year, I suddenly have this incremental increase. So there's a huge focus on that to actually drive cost out. Now, if I do it right, and I take this cost out, it's not about taking cost out by cutting things out. It's about doing it differently. Okay? And doing it differently means that maybe, just maybe, if I get it right, I can really start to actually provide a better customer experience. There's a direct correlation with a better customer experience and customer retention.
Churn.
Customer retention means if I'm not churning customers, I'm maintaining my revenue streams, which means I'm actually getting a bit more growth potentially. Now, if I've got this platform, which is much more responsive, now I can start to potentially sell differentiated services. I can start to sell value-added services. Now, how I sell those, there's a challenge in that, and I've got to figure out how to do that. And I do it through partnerships. So it's not just about what I sell, it's who I sell it with and the environment in which I sell it, the ecosystem. So things like zero-touch partnering, creating that marketplace environment where people can come to me and sell through me, whether it's in the consumer place or whether it's actually an enterprise place where I can now start to actually verticalize myself and I can actually start to sell ecosystem-based solutions with relevant parties into healthcare, into distribution, into whatever the vertical that I'm focusing on. And I think that's the opportunity. So the challenge is, and the great thing about our industry is we've got lots of very good people in lots of very specific areas. The trick is to make sure everybody is actually working to a common theme and to a common endpoint. So the work I do in networks or the work I do in IT or the work I do in operations can't be done in isolation. And I think that's the real power of what TM4 is really bringing to our industry. It's really making sure that all those disparate parts of the organization are working to a common end and that what they create works with everything else. In other words, it's like the jigsaw puzzle, but all the pieces fit.
A couple of questions as we head to wrap up. First, about the market dynamics. Alongside financial services, I mentioned at the beginning, is a big consumer of ICT, of technology. Both of you, as you say, mission-critical systems. Everyone expects to pick up the phone and the dial tone to be there, for want of a better analogy. That also tends to create a lot of risk aversion, so we say, especially in the face of change. Do you see, in your personal opinion, professionally, this is an opportunity for innovators to come in and basically, clean sheet this thing and start again? How much of a challenge do you think it is for those telcos, the incumbents, to adapt to all of this new technology?
I think that goes to the heart of the issue. I think we've got to adapt, we've got to evolve, we've got to change. And of course, the need for change is because somebody else could do it. And again, if you think about AI and data, what it does, it's a leveler. It creates a common starting point. So if I now start to adopt AI and I start to deploy AI as an operator, there is nothing stopping somebody else doing exactly the same thing. The question is, can they do it quicker? Can they do it better? And it kind of becomes very interesting because potentially from a theoretical point of view, but let's remember that what the service provider industry has, it's got this thing called pedigree. We understand how to deliver capabilities. We understand security. We understand all of these things. And more importantly, we have access to the marketplace already. So it's how we address it. So we have a head start, but like everything else, you take advantage of a head start. You've got to use it, but you've got to remember just over your shoulder there's somebody who can possibly do it just as well, maybe even better.
Well, on that point, you talked about security and trust, and I think most telcos have, well-trusted brands. Obviously, we have the occasional glitch. We've all had them. But for the most part, I think people would view their telco provider as a trusted entity, right up there with a bank, in terms of you're willing to give them a lot of information and trust. And that plays into this idea of sovereignty. And we're hearing a lot at the moment as we look at, we talk on the podcast about AI and private AI, sovereign AI and sovereign cloud. They seem to be talking topics amongst especially regulated industries. Just curious, is it coming up with the TM4 at all?
Yes, at a very personal level. I've been in industry for over 40 years, and sovereignty was something was big in the 80s. I mean, it was huge in the 80s and seemed to kind of go away. We didn't seem to care about it.
Yeah, well, we became very global, didn't we?
We became global, the global village. And then all of a sudden, the last 18 months, 2 years, for a whole variety of reasons, all of a sudden, sovereignty has become very important. And it's the conversation is now starting. And I actually think what we're going to see is maybe some legislation from certain governments are going to sit down and say, actually, we are really concerned about the power of AI and taking important information, taking it away and doing stuff with it. So I think what I think what we will see is we'll see a move towards sovereignty, keeping controls within borders. And again, this is a massive advantage for the operators in country, massive advantage, which they clearly have good sight of. But also, I think the legislators will actually also make sure that we actually have a proper protected environment for our citizens. So I think the combination of both of those means that this agenda item is going to become more and more important. So the good news in TM Forum, we're kind of ahead of the curve on that. What we've made sure is that everything we're doing from an architectural point of view and from a frameworks point of view, we've anticipated AI and we're anticipating the security challenges.
I can't thank you enough for joining us. If people are interested in learning more about your mission, TM Forum, where can they go?
Please, you can Google us, obviously, but or just www.tmforum.org. And look, we're here. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We're here to help our industry. There's huge amounts of information, data, research that we have available to us. So please come and look us up.
Perfect. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all for listening in. If you like what you heard, make sure to like, share and subscribe. We've got a great array of guests coming up. And with that, we'll see you all next week.